Good. So, good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jordan Harris. I'm Executive Director of Regions 4, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you all here to this event. We're very proud, as Regions 4, together with Under 2 Coalition and the European Committee of the Regions, to host this event where we're going to be zooming in right on subnational government leadership in driving forward the national adaptation plans and nationally determined contribution implementation. And we're proud as well to be joined and partnered very closely in this event with GIZ, with the NAP Global Network and the Scottish Government in order to make this a well-rounded panel full of lots of expertise and subnational voices to really drive home the message. So this year, very briefly, I can say that thanks to the UNFCCC presidency and the work every day of the LGMA constituency, right, and many of the subnational leaders that are here present today, we really have created a lot of drive and visibility, right, for the subnational government world, right, through the Local Climate Action Summit, and in particular as well through the CHAMP initiative, right, the Coalition of High Ambition, multi-level partnerships. We're really driving home the message that subnationals are essential for moving forward with the implementation and fulfillment of national commitments from around the world. At the same time, we're also acutely aware that the challenges are still high, right? There's still many challenges that are faced. The global stock take is a stark reminder of this. We are not on track for a 1.5-degree world. And this means that we really do need to start to focus increasingly more on adaptation and resilience at a local level. We need to keep trucking along. We need to do what we have to do with regards to mitigation, but we also have to start preparing on the ground for the inevitable impacts that are already here and that will continue to be more pronounced in the years to come, according to these records, as well as face the financial gap. So we know from the UNEP 2023 Adaptation Gap Report that there is a now estimated between $194 and $366 billion a year gap in terms of what we need to drive the resilience and the adaptation actions on the ground. So here at this event, what we're hoping to do is highlight the strong local government and municipal authority, the LGMA constituency call to action at COP28, through the shared position that's been submitted to the UNFCCC, which highlights in this first ever global stock take year, the ongoing negotiations, right, on global goal adaptation and the review of progress and the implementation of different government commitments, the key role of subnational cities, states, and regions in really driving forward the commitments that we need and the action that we so desperately need on the ground. So we'll highlight the experiences of multi-level governance, how there's collaboration between national, subnational, and local levels of government, as well as the definition and the implementation of the climate agenda's goal of achieving a just and equitable transition and resilient transition, right, towards net zero. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Cabinet Secretary Marie McCallan of Scotland to provide us with some opening remarks. And I understand you have a very busy schedule, and after this, you'll have to go. So we thank you for your time here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and thank you for being so flexible in allowing us to leave. It's a real pleasure to be able to give some opening remarks at this important event. And before beginning, I should just like to reiterate my thanks to everybody who worked very hard to make something like this come together. We are here together, COP28 2023, in what is already being recorded as the hottest year ever recorded on planet Earth. And I think that that makes it very clear that it is more critical than it has ever been that we do everything we can to collaborate, to come together as devolved, state, regional, and local delivery and governance partners, and to do everything we can on implementation. This event is also very aptly timed, as was mentioned. It was announced last week that Scotland is one of the partners, alongside others who are here today, who've endorsed the LGMA position to the UNFCCC at this year's COP, and that on multi-level action and the importance of it in addressing the climate and nature crises. We believe, and this event will help to amplify the fact that working together Our voices will always be louder and our impact will always be greater than if we work alone. Now, some of you might have had the opportunity to meet Scotland's new First Minister. He was here last week. He's really passionate about what I've been setting out this morning and what this event is about. Prior to coming to COP, he hosted a roundtable of representatives from devolved state and regional governments. And at that, we were able to discuss the opportunities as we see them to increase the role of the non-party governments within the formal UN climate processes. And I think we came together and we highlighted how we believe we can do that. Because we all know that climate change is happening aggressively. It's happening here and it's happening now. And I think we also all know, as leaders in our local areas, as citizens in our local areas, that often the impacts of that are felt most acutely at the local level. We have at national and regional level and local level, we reckon that about up to 80% of the actions that have to be taken across both mitigation and adaptation will require to be done at local level. We also, as a collective, oversee and distribute significant levels of public money. We have a very close relationship with our populations, and I'm particularly passionate about that because I believe that so much of what we need to do goes to the heart of behavioural change in our communities. So it's all the more important that the people delivering the change and asking people to change their behaviours have a close connection with their citizens. So it's in this context today that I'm going to use the rest of the time that I have just to set out some of the actions that we've been taking in Scotland. And I think there's a tendency, there's a desire sometimes to focus on mitigation. And I have no doubt that binding legislation on emissions reduction is one of the most important things that we can all take forward, and we certainly have in Scotland. But I want to focus my remarks on the sometimes lesser focused on, but equally as important, as you were saying, the question of adaptation. Because the need to adapt, as I said, is felt the most at local level. We recognise this in Scotland, and that's why next year we will publish a new national adaptation plan. This plan will recognise at its core the importance of regions and local authorities in the delivery of resilience actions in Scotland. It will cover 5 outcomes across nature, communities, public services, business and the economy, and our international efforts. And with this upcoming plan in mind, I just want to share a few of the examples in case that's helpful to my colleagues and friends across the world. Firstly, our regional adaptation partnerships, they're ramping up, and we have deliberately chosen to focus them both in Scotland's urban areas and in our more sparsely populated, including the Scottish Highlands that some of you may be aware of, and some of you may have been able to visit if you attended COP26 in Glasgow. These regional partnerships are building an ecosystem of local authorities and public bodies who are coming together and who are delivering adaptation that is tailored to the needs of the region and the people of that region. We've also facilitated a network of climate action hubs, supporting our communities to take locally led climate action. There's nothing more powerful than seeing your neighbours changing their behaviours in order to tell you that you too can make the change, sometimes much more valuable than governments telling you to do it. We've also continuing to fund local capacity building and advisory services for our local authorities, and that through our nationwide Adaptation Scotland programme. This programme sees our local authorities and our public bodies undertake a self-assessment of their own existing capacities, and then it sees us work with them to build from that baseline that they have compiled. Now, these are just a few examples of adaptation in practice. Scotland by no means has all the answers, and that's why platforms such as Regions 4, like Under 2 Coalition, and all the ways that we can come together as a community of international actors are so important, so that we can share our knowledge and share our understanding. We will continue to be, you can rely on this, that we will continue to be a strong international voice and an advocate for subnational governments, because we see the inherent value in what it is that we can deliver. And also we know that the decisions that we make today will make the difference between either a planet that is inhabitable for future generations to live in comfortably, or frankly, one that isn't. And I think that there can be no greater mission than delivering an habitable planet for future generations. And that is our collective mission. And it's one that we simply cannot fail in. So I hope those examples of how Scotland as a nation, but not as a state party, is working on adaptation. Thank you so much for your time and allowing me to share them. And we're always here, my colleagues and I from the Scottish Government are always happy to help share intelligence and approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. We're all very grateful for your leadership and your voice, both at home and on the international stage, of really providing that leadership and setting an example, right, of how subnationals can really push this agenda forward. So now I have the distinct pleasure of inviting two distinguished experts to come up on and join an expert panel where we can really zero in on the progress that's being made by cities, states, and regions in collaborating with their national government, specifically on national adaptation plans and NDCs. So I'd like to invite to please join us here on the panel Mauricio Luna Rodriguez from IISD, Mauricio's lead on vertical integration of the NAP Global Network, as well as Carmen Vot, head of the global section cities at the GIZ from Germany. So welcome, please. And I'd like to invite first Mauricio to provide a response to so I'll make a little bit of a provocation here. So where are we? Where are we at in terms of vertical integration, in particular with regards to national adaptation plans? If you could come give us a little bit of reflection on the progress that's been made.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Jordan. And it's great to have the stage after the welcoming remarks. And I really like your question because this is really part of the answer of the question we wanted to answer. So as you can see, we came up with this study on vertical integration. Is the progress on vertical integration in the national adaptation plans. And we're trying to capture these linkages between the national and the subnational in the adaptation process. If we can go to the next. So for those of you who might not be as familiar with the National Adaptation Plan process, this is country-led, and it aims at identifying and addressing that mid-term, but also the long-term adaptation priorities for the specific parties. And here, as you can see, basically, it can be understood as three broad phases, from planning to implementation to monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And as you can read here on the slide, we have pre-identified specific entry points for vertical integration in each of those phases. In the planning stage, where you can bring different stakeholders from the subnational level, including the subnational governments. In the implementation, you are going to see in the results, it's key to have subnational level. And of course, during the monitoring, evaluation, and learning as well. This is an emerging area. If we can go to the next, please. As the NAP Global Network, which we have also identified enabling factors. And here are 6. And you can see the connection to verticality, leadership. And I can say that all of us here on this panel are champions for vertical integration, multi-level governance. So this is a key element. And I'm very glad that it's taking momentum during this COP, as it was mentioned by Jordan. Institutional arrangements, which will depend on the multi-level structure of each specific country, engagement with different actors at the subnational level, including subnational level governments, clearly data knowledge and communications, especially for monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems. This is key at the subnational level as well, from the local to the national. And the last 2, skills and capacities. Climate change is very knowledge intensive, and we need to strengthen the capacities of our subnational level authorities. We also need to provide financing to the subnational levels, both from the national, but also from the international funding mechanisms. If we can go to the next. So now, because the time is short, I would like to provide some of the main elements of this report, of this synthesis report. As you can see, when we look at the subnational level government role in the NAP documents, it's clear that they are key for implementation. And this is great news now that we're moving from planning to implementation. It's also clear that they play a very important role and will continue to play a very important role in the planning cycle. And an emerging area is monitoring, evaluation, and learning. As I mentioned, we need to build capacities at subnational levels on this. If we can go to the next. We also identified some key non-governmental stakeholders that are really important in verticality. CSOs, civil society organizations, are mentioned with a specific role in a lot of the national documents for adaptation, but also micro, small, and middle-sized enterprises or local businesses, which drive a lot of our economies at home. And last but not least, communities. Especially, we heard about locally led, community-based. And if we can go to the next slide, you will see why this is important. There are some emerging concepts that are taking momentum as well. One of them is community-based adaptation, which has been around for over a decade. And some of you will be familiar with this concept, but also the emerging one of locally led adaptation. And here you can think of local as community, municipal, regional, is really the most appropriate subnational level for the specific intervention. And I would like to highlight here that when we are talking about regions, it allows to have a more comprehensive approach on tackling key ecosystems, tackling greater metropolitan areas, and even transboundary issues, which is an emerging area of concern. So let's think about the local, let's think about the municipal, but let's also think about the regional when we are talking about adaptation. And some other approaches that were mentioned in this analysis, as you can see, there are others, are, for example, ecosystem-based adaptation, which connects with the umbrella of nature-based solutions, which creates great interlinkages with other key agendas, not only the GGA, the Global Goal on Adaptation, and the Global Stocktake that was already mentioned, but also with the Sendai framework, with the Convention on Desertification, which unfortunately we don't hear as much about, but it's part of the Rio Conventions, and of course with the CBD on biodiversity. And now we have a new framework for biodiversity. And as was speaking with colleagues before the panel, it's really important to make sure that all the efforts that are being made at the subnational level are scaled up at the national level for the different national and international agendas. So the next slide is just to share access to this publication. If you would like to have a look, there are a lot of findings in there, and this is just a small introduction to some of them. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mauricio. Fascinating results, and I encourage you all to please, have a look. There's a lot of really good information in there. One of the issues that you mentioned had to do with the real dire need for technical support and finance, right? So with that, I'd like to invite Carmen Vogt to please maybe give us some reflections on, so GIZ, right? As a technical assistance organization, what can you do to support subnationals as far as, being able to finance the regionalization, the localization of NDCs and national adaptation plans?
Thank you very much, Jordan. Dear all partners, colleagues, friends, thank you very much for inviting me to this event. I will briefly speak about the role of technical assistance and how German development cooperation supports subnational level in accessing finance to the implementation of NDCs and NAPs. So I didn't bring a presentation along, but I can tell you, please approach me also after this event if you have further questions, or if you're interested in more methodological or other tools, this is not part of my few words because I have two hats on. On the one side, I am heading the global section on cities, on urban development at GIZ headquarters. But today I have also the other hat representing also the urban activities of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, in their urban activities. So we all know international agendas, especially the Paris Agreement, can and will not only be achieved with local and regional implementation. This we have heard many times during these days here at COP. And the integration of subnational contributions in the NDCs is essential because NDCs and the whole demand is happening at a local level. The same refers to the NAPs. And I think we should also consider to link the NDCs and the NAP discussion. During these days, I find the discussions are very separated. This was a little bit different a few years ago. This is my personal perception, but I really think we have to link it. And with this, we can only achieve a vertical integration and a multi-level governance approach. So as a federal organized country, Germany is a supporter of multi-level governance. Therefore, Germany advocates for local leadership in climate action. The German government welcomes the focus on the subnational element and is also supporting the CHAMP initiative, as Jordan already mentioned, led by the COP presidency and the Bloomberg philanthropies. And now I think the challenge is really, what does this endorsement and commitment mean? I think there's still a long way to go. But so I think we should start from here, from today, really to think and to talk what implementation really means. And talking about implementation, of course, we need the climate plans at a national and strategic level. We need the political support, but the crucial thing is finance, of course. And so the financing is also in our core focus and business of the German government. So Germany is a key donor in addressing the urban finance gap, obviously. And over the last years, Germany, the government from different ministries provided funding of more than 200 million euros to several major international initiatives. And GIZ is implementing those initiatives, specifically the initiatives on project preparation. For example, the C40 Cities Finance Facility, jointly implemented by GIZ and the C40 Network, and the City Climate Finance Gap Fund, implemented by GIZ in collaboration with the World Bank and the European Investment Bank. So support in preparing and structuring projects, including phases such as climate action planning, starting at a very early stage, project scoping, pre-feasibility studies, or the financial structuring of infrastructure projects. All this allows to be better prepared to access not only the domestic finance, but also the external finance that is needed for large-scale infrastructure investments. And of course, the public money has to be addressed, but these days we are also discussing a lot the role of national development banks and the mobilization of private sector capital is very present as well. And I think this should also be considered. So I will finish with an example from Southern Africa. The achievements of the project preparation support can be very well illustrated by what the eThekwini Metropolitan Municipality in Southern Africa has done. They built a business case for a transformative river management program, a TRMP, to rehabilitate and sustainably manage all of the city's urban corridors. The program aims to adapt I can't believe it. The 7,500 kilometers of streams and rivers in the city to the flooding, drought and higher temperatures that can be expected from climate change. The project achieved that more than 750 persons will benefit from increased resilience, and over 10,000 permanent jobs will be created through cooperative models for the management of the river. With this, I wanted to share with you only one short example because the time is very limited. The role of technical assistance of facilities in leveraging finance for localizing climate action. And now I'm very much looking forward to go a step further and to hear also from the countries and from cities what you are doing really on the ground. But very much looking forward to be in touch with you, and please approach me for further exchange on the technical side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you very much, Mauricio, for setting the scene here. I invite you please to stay with us, but I'll call now up onto the stage our next round of panelists. But thank you so much. And Carmen, I really did like, the sentiment that something is beginning. We should start here. Of course, this is all the culmination of many years of efforts and engagement and advocacy, but there is a sense, right, that with ELCAS, with CHAMP, that we are kind of starting into a new era of recognition of the subnational, the need to engage with subnationals in these processes. So I'd like to introduce first our panelists. So now we'll hear from subnational leaders, right, from their perspective, how they've been able to engage with their own national government. So I would first invite the Honorable Dr. Paul Otuoma, the Governor of Busia, who is also part of the Council of Governors of Kenya. So welcome, Governor, please. Yeah, anywhere. Yeah, wherever you want. I'd also like to invite onto the stage Tiago Pampoia, Vice Governor of the State of Rio de Janeiro. Welcome, Vice Governor. I would also like to welcome Apostolos Tsitsikostas, the first Vice President of the European Committee of the Regions and Governor of Central Macedonia region. Welcome, hello. Well, and you? Good. And last but certainly not least, I would like to welcome Mireia Boya, DG for Environmental Quality and Climate Change of the Government of Catalonia. Mireia, please join us. And we're very happy to be here collaborating with our friends at Under 2 Coalition, right? So to moderate this panel of subnational leaders, I would invite my friend and colleague Nemat Kaur, Head of Under 2 Subnational Governments and Policies, to moderate the session.
Thank you, Jordan. Welcome, everyone. It's a great occasion, the Multi-Level Action and Urbanization Day, and we're all amongst friends here. Thank you to our panelists for joining us and be willing to share your insights on this important day and on this important issue. So I'm not going to take much time. I think I have the easy job, so I'm going to switch directly to our panelists and put them on the spot a little bit. But first, we have the Governor of Busia County. Governor, to you. My first question is, you've obviously heard experts speak about the opportunities to regionalize and localize NDCs and national adaptation plans. What specific actions are you leading in your government to be able to regionalize and localize NDCs and national adaptation plans in Kenya?
Thank you very much for welcoming me in this panel. To go directly to the point, in Kenya, we adopted a constitution that created multi-level government in the year 2010. And that is part of the constitution, whereby we have got 47 county governments with autonomy, and they are responsible for addressing various challenges, especially in terms of the climate. Because of these unique governance structures, the implementation framework on climate issues is within the county governments. And what we did through devolution interplay, the 2016 Climate Change Act, which was created a distinctive framework, whereby we have got the National Climate Change Council, which is chaired by the president, and which ensures implementation of the nationally determined programs under the Paris Agreement. Through integration, again, we have got county level responses, which are also outlined in the national determined contribution, that is NDC, which reflects Kenya's commitment in reducing greenhouse gas by 32% by 2030. At regional level, the county governments have also developed what we are calling county climate change funds that promote mainstreaming of climate change adaptation and mitigation into local planning and budget systems, whereby we are putting in a minimum of between 1 to 3% of our budgets in terms of funding that. And further, Kenya National Climate Change Action Plan also provides a far-reaching blueprint that mainstreams adaptation and mitigation measures within that system. The county governments have also mainstreamed this implementation through what we are calling our county integrated development plans, so that we are able to budget for them. Those are the key areas that we have really done. In addition to that, if you allow me to continue, we have also set up specialized climate change units. And these climate change units are both in the counties and also in the wards. Because within the counties, we have also administrative structures that we are calling the wards, where we have got ward planning committees that are helping to prioritize which areas do we invest in and which areas do we prioritize in strengthening climate resilience activities. Can you say something further, if I have time? I think one of the experts here talked about the vertical and horizontal integration through coordination, which is something that we are also doing in a collaborative processes, of course, through harmonized governance, which is impactful on the climate action. Do I still have some time? Thank you. I saw you looking at your watch. So what this really means is that these integrated climate policies that are cross-cutting, and they are holistic in their approach, they're interconnected, and we are also fostering active engagement of diverse stakeholders, which of course includes government agencies, like you have again saw in that presentation on community-based organization, non-government players, and the private sectors. They are also included. We are also promoting establishment of green finance initiatives through green bonds and climate change funds. To facilitate transfer of also climate resilient technologies between the countries is something that we are also encouraging, and I have been encouraged by the presentation from GIZ. This is something that we are also trying to do, of course, to promote local innovations. So in conclusion, for effective implementation of climate adaptation actions requires, of course, multifaceted government approach and cross-sector collaboration, and of course, innovative financing mechanisms. That's what we are doing. And for Busia, maybe just to mention a bit, this is across the country what I've said, but from the county where I'm the governor, we have implemented this in place. But currently, just to show the problems we are facing, we have got low-lying area. My county is a very low-lying area. And before we used to have floods maybe in 5 to 7 years, but now they're almost permanent. We have got part of our regions like the Budalangi region, which is completely now almost submerged because of the rise of Lake Victoria. So we have got almost 50,000 households that, as I speak today, are currently affected. The other day, we also had a storm that has never been seen in our county, and I remember talking to an elderly person, almost 80 years, and he said throughout his life, he has never seen that. Around 160 households were affected, whereby they were blown off, houses were blown off, we even lost some lives. And they said it's a phenomenon that they had never seen. So those are some of the unique challenges that we are facing,
Right.
especially for my county. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. No, that's absolutely right. Like we just heard from the governor, the climate emergency is here, it's real, and that's all the more reason why this multi-level partnership is so key and so important. I do want to move on to our next speaker, Vice Governor Tiago Pampola from Rio de Janeiro. Vice Governor will be speaking in Portuguese, so we ask all of you to switch to your headsets, where the English channel is channel number 1. Vice Governor, to you, my question is, how is your government leading to regionalize or localize NDCs and national adaptation plans? What actions are you taking in Rio de Janeiro?
Bom, muito bom dia a todos. É uma alegria estar aqui. Queria inicialmente saudar aqui todos os panelistas, agradecer muito o convite, parabenizar mais uma vez a Regions 4 por proporcionar mais essa instância, mais esse debate, mais essa mesa de discussão, onde dá farol às políticas subnacionais, ao que a gente desenvolve nos nossos estados, metrópoles, grupo de cidades, que é fundamental para contribuir com os nossas políticas nacionais e com o que o mundo precisa, sem dúvida nenhuma, alcançar. Essa COP é uma COP muito importante, que nós estamos vendo que foi feito um grande balanço do que, de fato, avançou ou não avançou do Acordo de Paris até hoje. Isso é um convite maravilhoso para que todos nós façamos as nossas análises internas, para que a gente levante tudo aquilo que nós, de fato, estamos contribuindo ou perdendo tempo, não contribuindo dentro das nossas cidades e estados. Eu sou vice-governador do estado do Rio de Janeiro, ao mesmo tempo também sou secretário de Estado de Meio Ambiente, então é uma pauta que eu trabalho muito fortemente no estado. O estado do Rio de Janeiro é um estado que contribui, que representa 0,5% do território nacional, ou seja, é um estado muito pequeno em termos territoriais, mas é a maior densidade demográfica do Brasil. Ou seja, nós temos ali desafios muito grandes, porque é um estado muito pequeno, com muita gente morando junto. Isso traz para nós muitas preocupações em todos os aspectos, seja na adaptação, seja no âmbito da conservação e da tão almejada restauração florestal, que nós temos projetos robustos nesse sentido. Nós hoje estamos elaborando o nosso plano de descarbonização da economia. Uma ação importante, visto que o estado do Rio de Janeiro é ainda um estado cuja a energia ela é baseada em fontes não renováveis, fósseis, como o petróleo e o gás natural. Nós somos o maior produtor de petróleo, de óleo bruto do país, né, contribuindo com mais de 80%, e, portanto, nós temos a noção da nossa responsabilidade, né, de fazer essa transição, de fazer o que precisa ser feito para contribuir com o Brasil frente aos nossos desafios. Então, hoje, nós temos, apesar de ser o maior produtor de petróleo e sermos um estado pequeno, nós temos hoje uma contribuição em termos de emissão de gases de efeito estufa, e nós estamos em 14º lugar dos 26 estados do Brasil. Então, nós não somos os piores, mas também sabemos que precisamos avançar muito. Então, políticas como restauração florestal, nós em Glasgow, na penúltima COP, nós pactuamos que avançaríamos em 440 mil hectares de Mata Atlântica, que é o nosso principal bioma do estado, contribuindo até 2050 com a pegada de 159 milhões de toneladas de gases de efeito estufa. Nós temos um trabalho de saneamento que está sendo possibilitado graças ao nossos investimentos do governo do estado, onde os municípios estão fazendo o tratamento e a coleta e tratamento do seu esgoto, isso também tornando mais uma forma, mais uma rota de contribuição para uma energia limpa nas modais de transporte e na redução do metano. Então, queria já estou aqui com o meu tempo esgotando, mas dizer da alegria de poder estar aqui, contribuir, né, com a Regions 4 e dizer que nós vamos seguir trabalhando forte para manter nossa floresta em pé, para manter nossos índices de matamento zero e fazendo a transição justa das nossas fontes energéticas, que, sem dúvida nenhuma, é o principal dever de casa do Estado do Rio de Janeiro.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Governor. We are also very happy that you're here. And, sort of the Vice Governor talked about them being a very high population density state, as well as being one of the highest producers of fossil fuels in the country, which is why they're kind of looking at the challenge of climate finance to be able to regionalize Brazil's national targets. Thank you, Vice Governor. That was really interesting. Moving on to our next speaker, Vice President of the European Committee of Regions, Governor Apostolos. My question to you is, what governance mechanism, whether it's cross-sector or cross-actor, financial instruments or otherwise, can support, obviously we just heard from the Vice Governor that finance is a big challenge. And at the same time, they need to promote economic growth. What can support effective implementation of climate mitigation and adaptation actions, according to you?
Thank you very much, first of all. And I would say that it's great to be here today, because we are discussing very interesting topics that are climate action, decision-making, and implementing on the ground. So I would say that it's one of the most fruitful discussions that we had during these days. And I want to welcome you for your invitation. And I'm here in both capacities as Vice President of the European Committee of Regions, which is the assembly of the 1 million representatives from the local politicians in Europe, 240 regions, 90,000 municipalities are represented in this body, the Committee of Regions in the European Union. It's an official institution. And on the other hand, I come here also as governor of Central Macedonia. It's in northern Greece, capital city Thessaloniki. And so, having said that, I have to admit to you that I am a governor in a region, in a country that has been severely hit during the last months and years because of the climate change, the climate crisis. We had floods 3 months ago that were unprecedented, that surpassed any other flooding we had in the past years. Matter of fact, meteorologists said it was one of the worst floodings in Europe in the last 200 years. We have huge amount of people relocating. About 20,000 people are relocating. Their houses are not anymore fit for them. And at the same time, during the summer, we have wildfires that we have never experienced before. So if there was a case study for what climate crisis means, I would say Thessaloniki and Greece as a whole is a very good example. Of course, this is the case for the whole Mediterranean, but we have faced the real aggression of the climate change. We know, in other words, what it means to mitigate, what it means to work hard in order to do something, and do something today. Because, there is a lot of discussion. We are here at the COP28 for 11 days, 12 days, discussions, round tables. And at the end, what? Do we have something concrete? Or is it one more summit that will not end in setting very strict and high goals for the climate? I have 2 kids, 6 and 4 years old. I cannot accept that these kids will grow up in a worse environment than what we did, endangering their lives, abrupting the economic and the social structures of our societies, because this is what's going to happen. And it's not going to happen 50 years, 60 years later. It's going to happen 10 years from today, even earlier. So what we need to do, to come to your question, because I had to say this in order to create the framework to answer your question. What we need to do is first, for all the reasons I explained, to finally empower regions and cities to be involved in the process. We are responsible for implementing 70% of the decisions that are taken on high European and world levels on the ground. But are we involved? No. We are not enough involved. This COP28 was the first COP after so many years that had a summit for local and regional authorities. It was the first one. The first one for us who implement, again, I repeat this, 70% of the policies on the ground. So we need stronger role for regions and cities, not only in the implementation, but also on the design phase of what we need to do. Second, we need to create, finally, an effective multi-level governance where every actor will know what he does, when he does it, and how he does it. Today, this is not the case. And in this multi-level governance mechanism, the regions and cities, of course, will and can play a very important role. Now, of course, in order to succeed, we need some basic tools. As you understand, we need skills, we need money, which is not the case either. Of course, we have the European funds, and based on what you were discussing earlier, I have to tell you that in my region, we are constructing today the biggest metropolitan park of the Eastern Mediterranean, 300,000 square meters in the heart of the city of Thessaloniki, 90% of which will be green and will allow socioeconomic aspects of our society to develop there as well. And we're also constructing the new waterfront of our city, Thessaloniki, which is on the sea, 40 kilometers, again, greening it and making it friendly to the environment. And many other works. We have also units. I heard the governor from Kenya saying we have also units to control at any time the situation with the emissions. But what we need to do, and I close with this, number one, empowering regions and cities. Second, multi-level governance with tools so that we can deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. You made a really important point about being involved in the design phase, and I think we're all here, and we should all continue to come in stronger numbers to more COPs, and not just COPs, the World Economic Forums, the G7s, the G20s, the regions need to get mainstreamed in economic conversations worldwide as well. But to turn to our last but not least speaker, Catalonia, a very dear friend to Regions for the Under 2 Coalition. We have Miriam Boya, DG for Environmental Quality and Climate Change. DG, how does your government support the effective implementation of climate and adaptation actions? We, of course, heard from the governor a little bit about it, but tell us from your perspective what you're doing in Catalonia.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting us. I have a lot of things to say, to explain, and a few minutes only. I will start with the adaptation issues. In Catalonia, in January 2023, we approved the Catalan Climate Change Adaptation Strategy with Horizon 2030. This is our national action plan for the adaptation with 74 operational goals and 3,012 direct measures to implement these goals. This national action plan contains A first very interesting and important thing that we have regionalized climate projections at a scale of 1 kilometer. And this is very important for the local level. No? We plan at the regional, subnational level, but creating the tools to implement the adaptation at the local level. This strategy also contains the analysis of the vulnerability and the risk of the impacts of climate change in 17 different areas. 4 natural systems, 10 socioeconomic areas, and 3 territories, no? The mountains, the coastal area, and the inland territories. Then we have a difference between territories too, and every local government can find the adaptation measures adapted for its own territory. We analyze also the vulnerability according to gender and social origin. Women and poor people are more affected with the effects of climate change, and this is very important to consider. And finally, the objective of reducing this vulnerability are accompanied by the necessary adaptation measures to meet them, no? These 3,012 measures. The deployment of this strategy corresponds to all sectorial government departments that must integrate and deploy the adaptation measures in their sectoral planning and programming. No? And now in January 2024, we will see if this is a reality in the whole government of Catalonia, or we have to work harder. With respect to the NDCs, Catalonia is committed to establishing the GHG emission reduction targets for the compliance periods established by the European Union and the Spanish state. That means that Catalonia total GHG emissions must be reduced by 51% in 2030 horizon. In order to achieve this reduction, an integrated energy and climate plan is being prepared and drafted with a view to 2030, and that will be our strategical reference framework for mitigation. This plan will include the GHG emission target for areas of activity, no, economical sectors, as well as the measures necessary to achieve them in a planned manner. Then we are planifying also the mitigation targets for all these economical sectors. Some examples of measures that include this national mitigation strategy. For example, to commit the sustainable urban mobility with 100% zero emissions of the public transport by 2028. No? Governments at the regional level, we have the competence with the public transports, also the local authorities. Then this is a direct measure to implement this mitigation plan. Also promote the use of green hydrogen. We have some projects or promote the valorization of livestock dropping and organic waste in a sustainable way with a biogas plant that already has 80 plants in the process. The last one, and very different from other regions and countries, is promote the self-consumption of and the energy sovereignty with subsidies to finance the creation of local energy communities, and with the creation of L'Energètica. L'Energètica is a public energy company that aims to put photovoltaic panels on all the roof of the public buildings of the governments in 4 years, and allocate the energy surplus to the vulnerable neighbors, vulnerable families living around the public buildings. Then finally, to end this point, this question, Catalonia also will approve, I hope, their own carbon budget next year. We are working hard with the scientists and with a committee of experts chosen by the Parliament of Catalonia.
Fantastic. Please give Catalonia a round of applause as well. So quickly to wrap up this panel, we heard leading by example, which Catalonia is really, really doing. We heard getting involved in the design phase from Central Macedonia. We heard about climate finance and needing to address economic growth from Rio de Janeiro, and from Busia, we also heard about vertical integration with wards and national government. This was really fantastic. I'm going to wrap up the panel here and hand back to Jordan to give us closing remarks. But we've had a stellar panel. Yep. We're going to do a quick photo, Jordan, before we hand to you. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Round of applause for our panelists, huh? Amazing. Yeah. I'll be very brief. Sorry. I'll be brief. I'm just going to give some very brief closing remarks just to close off the session today. So, yeah, thank you all very much. We've seen here very clearly how specific cities, states, and regions are on the front lines of this crisis. Right, we've seen in Busia unprecedented floods, right, and storms. We've seen in Central Macedonia, right, unprecedented floods and fires, right, that are happening. So we've seen very concrete and specific examples of how subnational governments are indeed on the front lines of the crisis, and at the same time, how that also makes them natural leaders, how that makes them naturally well positioned to really be putting in place the kinds of policy and action responses that we need. So their direct connection with citizens, right, with different civil society groups, their willingness and their capacity to mobilize and engage with their local populations in the fight against climate change makes it very clear that national governments will not be able to fulfill their commitments if they don't work hand in hand with subnationals. It's just a fact. And so I think that is really part of the way that we can strengthen our engagement here as well at COP, right? And as we continue to fight for that recognition. So we've showcased how it's important to value the role of subnationals and how by embracing this multi-level governance approach, collaboration between cities, states, and regions and provinces and the national governments is really the best and the only way that we can move forward and get the real ambitious change and action that we need. So from Regions 4, in particular through our Regions Adapt platform, we're going to be continuing to showcase these kinds of best case examples and provide opportunities. Just yesterday, we launched our Regions Adapt 2023 progress report with a specific focus on how vulnerable, the most vulnerable communities are integrated into these planning and action cycles. I would encourage you all to have a look. We heard from Catalonia here today, right? The importance of working with those populations under the principle of leaving no one behind. And with that, I'll make it a wrap as we continue, in particular, through our common LGMA constituency to fight now at COP for a positive outcome. We know, we've heard today from our leaders on the panel that this is what we need. We need more recognition, and we know that we're following very closely the negotiations. And I'll ask you all to please join us in continuing to push for that recognition and a positive outcome for all. Thank you very much for being here today.